So that is Callistemon citrinus. It's a beautiful flower, isn't it? We know it more oftenly termed bottlebrush tree. Callistemon means beautiful stamen, or basically beautiful flower. G'day, I'm Roland Hearn, and this is a walk in the garden. Well, actually not so much of a walk today. I was out walking the other day and I noticed these beautiful flowers. I see them all the time, I see them every day. Don't really think about them very much. But this is what we typically call a bottlebrush tree. And if you have a close look at them, you can tell why. And they look like bottle brushes, don't they? I think, from memory, if I dig deep into my mind, I think as a child this was one of the first plants that I knew was uniquely Australian. And of course it is today found all over the world as people have transplanted it. But typically this is an Aussie tree. And as a young person, or as a child, it was one of the first things that helped me to recognize that that I live in a country that is separated and disconnected from the rest of the world, and it's a different place. You grow up in a place and you get very used to the things you see. You think they're not unusual, but when visitors would come and they would see a plant like this, they would remark on that as something that they had never seen before. So there's a very clear reflection of this flower helping me to work out my identity. Well, this is going to be a very quick walk in the garden this week. I am off to New Zealand this weekend, so the video next weekend will reflect that trip to New Zealand. I'm incredibly excited about that, actually. I really am. It's the first international travel since the beginning of last year, and we came home from New Zealand right as the COVID crisis was beginning to impact global movement. And so heading back there speaks to me of the fact that we're finally moving through this process. Long way to go yet. I've had my injection. I'd encourage everyone to do that as well. Let's get life back to normal again as quickly as we possibly can. But anyway, I'm excited about that, and hopefully I'll get a chance to do a walk in the garden there in New Zealand. I'm going to be in the city of Hamilton, and I'm hoping that will all work out, and I'll be able to find something there to inspire some thoughts, some walk in the garden related thoughts. But let's back to the bottle brush tree. And this being a part of me understanding my identity. The things that shape our identity and shape our understanding are the things that shape our worth. And I've been trying to find practical ways of reflecting, particularly in my own journey, on concepts that relate directly to the issues of identity shaping and how shame works in those spaces and how love responds to that. A few weeks ago I was speaking about loneliness, and I felt like there is a related issue with loneliness that needs to be addressed, and it's the accompanying activity that goes with loneliness. And that is isolation. To self-isolate, to disconnect ourselves from others, is a reflection of our struggle with shame. A need to be isolated, a need to be disconnected, talks to us of our struggle with identity and our struggle of shame. I'm not talking about needing to be alone. Lots of people, including myself, have to have time where we're alone. I'm talking about extended periods of time where we either mentally and or physically disconnect from people and isolate and live in that space of disconnection. That is a representation of our struggle with shame. It's a representation of our struggle with worthlessness. Very often it's accompanied with thoughts that says nobody wants me to be in relationship with them, and so that's where it connects with loneliness, and so therefore I will disconnect. Rather than deal with the pain of rejection, I will disconnect and I'll isolate. And it's a very, very destructive activity in our lives. Again, the desire to get away and be alone is not harmful at all. In fact, sometimes it's very healthy. But the need to disconnect and isolate it, associated with the idea that people do not want me to be in relationship with them, so the way to avoid the pain is in isolation, is a reflection of our struggle with shame. And what I would like most to be able to say in this video is identify those thoughts that go along with that. Recognize if you are finding yourself needing to disconnect, ask yourself, is this a healthy need to be alone, or is this a result of my own sense of worthlessness, my own sense of struggle, my own sense of the meaning of my life, the value of my life, and my reaction to that is that experiencing communication that tells me that I'm worthless or worth less hurts me, and so therefore the only way to avoid that is to be isolated and disconnected. I am incredibly proud of the younger of my two sons, who went through a period of his life where he identified that was one of his coping mechanisms. It flowed from his personality, and in that space he recognized how that was impacting himself, and so he very, very deliberately made choices to go out and meet people, find people, and embrace relationship. In fact, he got apps on his phone, and that indicated where groups were gathering. He made lists of groups, and he just went, and even if he had no interest in the issues they were dealing with, he went and was with them for long enough to get to know them, and long enough to overcome that awkwardness of being separate from the group. An incredibly shaping experience. My son has this amazingly caring heart that he expresses to people, and if you care, it's easy to get hurt. But what he did was he recognized in himself the tendency to isolate, and he addressed it. So let me encourage you, if you find yourself isolating, make deliberate choices to connect with people. And if the people you know you feel like a part of the problem, then find ways of meeting new people, of connecting with new people. Secondly, again, that is the space where God's love makes the most sense. One of the reasons that we need to have an awareness of God and who He really is, and have God's activity in our life, is it addresses that need to isolate. I am not uncertain, double negative, that one of the reasons people struggle with faith is because of the idea of this supreme being that would reject them like everybody else is. And so it's a lot easier just not to deal with that. And there's so many miscommunications about the character and nature of God. It's just a lot easier not to have faith. But in my journey, as I've walked through all of those things, I'm doing this because it's kind of like walking through a thick scrub, all of those things that say things about God that I've discovered just aren't consistent and just don't work. As I've walked through that and allowed myself to become vulnerable to the love of God and discover how much He values me and how much I can actually have a genuine relationship with God, I have recognized in myself that when I feel the need to isolate, it is quite often accompanied with an isolation from God. And so one of the things that I do very deliberately is think through what is happening in my life and become vulnerable again to the love and the grace of God. And I would encourage you to explore that in your life. If you are a Christian, if you have faith, but you find yourself isolating, what does that say about how you understand God's love for you? If you're a person that watches these videos and you don't have faith, it's one of those things that I would just encourage you to explore. Is part of the construct that's working in your life a limited sense of trust with what might be the character of God? And what if you considered God as a God of love, that loves you more than you could possibly imagine and values you beyond your wildest dreams, and that all you needed to have that center in your life was to become vulnerable to that love and allow God's love to reach to you in that space? And I would encourage you to consider that as an option for your life. Well, thanks for being with me today. I am looking forward to speaking to you from Hamilton, New Zealand next week.